Hello, everyone. Bill Meridian again, speaking to you this time from New York on July 28th, 2025. I had reviewed Saturn and Neptune twice. Number one, we looked at the Federal Reserve, which is certainly in the news because the Saturn Neptune conjunction is in the early degrees of Aries and it will be opposed by the upcoming eclipse, which is almost at zero Libra in September, making it very powerful. And we also looked at Russia. It has an effect on Russia. That's a separate video. So now let's look at scandals. And by the way, BillMeridian.com is the old website. The new additional one is BillMeridianAstrology.com. You can check those out. Scandals. Saturn and Neptune connections have coincided with USA scandals in the past. I've reviewed this many times in Del Horoscope over 30 years. This Saturn-Neptune conjunction is very powerful because, number one, it's a conjunction. As Charles Jane would say, in a conjunction, you divide the energy by 1. In an opposition, you divide it by 2. In a trine, you divide it by 3. So conjunctions are very powerful. It's at the world points, which are 0 Aries, 0 Cancer, 0 Libra, and 0 Capricorn, with an orb of about 1 degree, maybe a little more. 15 fixed is 45 to the world points. So 15 Taurus, 15 Leo, 15 Scorpio, 15 Aquarius. They are not world points, but they connect to the world points. So anything that happens at the world points affects the entire world. You can't keep a secret when you have the world points involved. Next, this Saturn-Neptune conjunction will be opposed by the upcoming September solar eclipse, makes it even more powerful, and the conjunction isn't even exact until February 2026. This eclipse is conjunct the USA midheaven, which if you believe in the Sibley chart, and I've done successful forecasting with the Sibley chart, and I've started to rectify it versus other charts, and it's held up so far, but if you read about the history of the Sibley chart, it gives you some doubts. Anyway, I have used it. It has worked for me. Horoscopes in the line of fire, the USA, as I just mentioned. Hillary Clinton, who's got more points and planets at the world points than any one chart I have. Donald J. Trump Jr., and I just threw in William Shatner because everybody knows who Captain Kirk is, and his sun is at 0 Aries. So I'm not including him in this, but at his age, this might be news about his health. Now, eclipses start having an effect up to 90 days in advance, which would take us to late June. And the reason I'm making this video was because last week, look what Tulsi Gabbard announced. She named all of the people involved in the Russiagate fraud. It is now, by the prior administration's own documentation, it was put together by who? Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. I've already covered Russia, so Russia is connected to Saturn, Neptune, so there's no need to mention it again. But let's look at the eclipse. Here it is, set for New York, September 21, 2025, which is, of course, it is on the world point. It is at 29 Virgo 05, which is close enough to 0 Libra. It is opposite Saturn and Neptune. Saturn's at 28 Pisces and Neptune at 0 Libra 48. Also, the Saturn-Neptune midpoint is 29 Pisces 38, which is only 22 minutes off the world point. And my friend Victoria Martin out in Chicago pointed out to me that the Uranus-Pluto midpoint is 1 Aries 25. Uranus-Pluto having to do with drastic changes in financial condition or simply drastic changes. So anybody who gets hit by this is getting a combination. I think you'll see an increase in bankruptcies. Given this, I'm not saying who, because I'd have to search through a mountainous database, but this certainly appears to be the case. So that is the eclipse. Now let's look at the USA chart. Well, here we are. There's 1 Libra 03 on the midheaven. So this eclipse is on that midheaven, and Saturn and Neptune are opposite it. No wonder we're having a big scandal in the USA as of the Tulsi Gabbard announcement in the last week. So that is a connection to the US. And also, being on the IC says something about real estate and the housing market, something not positive, probably high interest rates and difficulty in getting loanable funds, since Neptune has to do with futures trading, things you don't have, credit. So it would say a lack of credit, or in other words, high prices, high interest rates are a problem. And Of course, we've seen with the horoscope of the Federal Reserve that the president is pressuring Jay Powell to lower rates. So now here's Hillary Clinton, Miss World Point. And by the way, this 8 p.m. time comes from my friend Joyce Levine up in Boston, who bought Hillary's book, went to the book signing, and asked her directly what time were you born, and Hillary said 8 p.m. I've been using this chart since the Clintons came on the scene way back in the early 90s, late 80s. Moon, 29 Pisces 11. Ascendant, Uranus on the ascendant. The ascendant is 29 Gemini 50. And then we have the descendant, of course, is opposite the ascendant. But here we also find Juno at 29 Sagittarius 42, only 18 minutes from 0 Capricorn. And then we have Mars and Pluto at 15 Leo, 45 degrees to the world points, and thus also involved. And it came out that the Russians had information that Hillary's emotional, psychological condition was not good, and she was on a lot of drugs and medication. So it is about her health. So that's probably going to be, at her age, a big issue in the coming year after the eclipse, and she's caught up in this scandal. Also mentioned was Barack Obama. Now, he has only Venus Vulcanus at the world point, very close to 0 Cancer. Venus Vulcanus accounts for his great popularity. If you want to have something on the world points, then you want something pleasant. And Venus Vulcanus is very powerful. It's great power of attraction. And he's very well poised, very handsome guy, very good speaker. And he also has Juno at 0 Aries 39, which is an asteroid that would link to people who were, as my friend Diana Rosenberg used to say, do you know when you see these pictures of disasters on television, all the refugees are represented by Juno. In other words, people who are powerless, down and out. So his rhetoric appealed to people, I think, in that group. But Venus Vulcanus being activated by Saturn and Neptune means a little dampening, I think, in his popularity. It's not important to him now. He's no longer in office. But I'm just showing you that the world point makes a connection here. Now, here is the supposed horoscope of Donald Trump Jr. I do not know whether this is accurate or not. It's December 31, 1977 at 5:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in New York. I picked it up off the internet, but the first thing I noticed, being interested in world points, do we all know who he is? Yes. What has he got on the midheaven? 1 Aries. What is that square? Jupiter at 29, Gemini 52, 8 minutes from the world point of 0 Cancer. Is he known for his wealth? Yes, he is. And Juno, 29 Sagittarius 26, close enough to 0 Capricorn. So we have a Juno, Jupiter, midheaven T-square, if this is an accurate birth time. I have not rectified it. I just came across this about a month ago. So will he be caught up in this? Well, I would say he's not necessarily caught up in this Russiagate scandal, as it's now being called. I would say there may be some dampening of his reputation for some reason. As I've said before, Saturn, Neptune. Neptune is what we hope or wish were true. Saturn is what is true. And when the two come together, there's a gap that closes that can cause depression in some people. As an English professor friend of mine said when I explained this to him, show me a man with no illusions, and I'll show you someone who is not bothered by Saturn and Neptune. So that's the way I would look at it. And particular times you should look at. In the eclipse chart, October 18th, Mars will be right on the midheaven of the eclipse chart. On December 13th, Mars is square the eclipse point itself. December 16th, Mars squares Neptune in the eclipse chart. And on February 5th, 2026, Saturn opposes the eclipse point. That's probably the most powerful, and it's also the month in which Saturn and Neptune are exactly conjunct, 0 orb. They have not done so yet. They've been very close, but not 0. In the USA chart, Mars will be 45 to the midheaven October 15th, and Mars will be 90 to the midheaven December 16th. Those are dates in which you have these Gabbard type announcements. And these are dates when you have manifestations of the overall trend. So if you do a scan through your database and look for 0 cardinal or 15 fixed, you'll come up with lots of charts that are being hit by Saturn and Neptune. And needless to say, the more planets they have at those points, the more powerfully they will be hit. And they could have even more points or temporarily have points by secondary progression, something else to be aware of. And I'll just mention from the first video, Saturn and Neptune could also be droughts. It can be illnesses, and scandals is just one. I'm looking at scandals only right now. And as I mentioned, Sergei Tarasov and I did a study of Saturn, Neptune, and how it tends to coincide with drought conditions. But I'm not worried about any of these entities being hit by a drought. I'm just talking about there's a revealing of something Neptunian, and you'll get the facts, which is Saturn, which can be very disappointing to many people. So, mundane book, Mastering Geopolitical Prediction, is available at billmeridian.com. And there's the old Predictive Power of Eclipse Paths with all of Charles James and John Dro's Grandmaster Secrets, if they had any. And there's also In Search 1 and In Search 2, which are reprints of Charles James journals, in which you get the original 1959 to 1961 work that laid the foundation for many of these veteran astrologers. And also, if you're interested in financial astrology, the 2 financial books are up there. Until next time, trying to stay out of the Saturn Neptune shadow. I'll talk to you in a week or two. Goodbye.